Good morning. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. Today it's just a little bit of catch up about what's been happening in the reading pile. This is a week since we lost our little cat Cleo Bell, and it has been a hard week. Steve and I have both been working from home. I always work from home, but he's been working from home since the pandemic, and she became, as an elderly cat, she was close to 16 years old. She became completely catered to. When we were at the vets, someone came out and said, "Would the owners of Cleo Bell please come forward?" And so we're like, "We're not the owners, we're the handmaidens." So there's no one to handmaiden to, which is really, we're having a hard time. And we went up to the camp, and that's where the camp is a very small, 2 buildings and a very small kind of clearing amongst a lot of wilderness. So we were definitely tripping over each other, but it was very hard to just kind of make that change. So what I'm talking about today are the books. I had that pile of books that I sorted all through, and the ones that I had hoped to read for July. And I'm pretty pleased with myself. I didn't count how many books there were on the pile. Some of them were rather large. But what I also did was a number of books came in from the library, and they got sort of feathered through. I've talked about this before. This is the app called Reading List, and it's free. And what you can do is whenever you get a new book that you want to have in your to-do list, you can scan the barcode, and it will take a picture of up will come a picture of the book and the particulars in terms of the number of pages and the publisher and so forth, and usually a very brief little description of what the book was about. And then you can manage it in lists. And so in my finished pile, in addition to what I had said I was going to read, I also read Square Haunting, 5 Writers in London Between the Wars, which is nonfiction. And I did a little video on that I'll bring to you towards November, when it's Nonfiction November. So that's a really fun challenge, where the month of November is just try and read as many nonfiction books as possible. So I'm just getting ready. And I also started to read City of Girls, which was on my pile, but turned out, I don't know why I picked it. It was not good at all. Anyhow, we'll talk about that later. Actually, I won't, because if I don't finish a book, I tend to not bring it back. But Elizabeth Gilbert is considered to be a really, really good author, and I will give her credit for being a really good writer. But the plot just didn't capture my attention at all. So for those who like Elizabeth Gilbert, it's definitely a good read. As I say, the main character, just for me, was a bit of a fizzle. I also read Posted by John David Anderson, which was a middle reader, and that was quite good. If you're looking for something for an older middle reader, that is a solid choice. And I read The Case of the Left-Handed Lady, an Enola Holmes mystery. Some of you may have watched the Enola Holmes, I guess it was, what do you call it? Was it a mini-series? I think they did it in 3 parts. And it was about the sister, a very young sister of Sherlock Holmes, and she's solving mysteries as well. And this was book 2, not the one that was in the movie, but the next one. And so that was a good fun. And The Holding mystery by Graham Norton turned out to be good. And I also picked up something called The Austen Escape, not so good. And I read The Memory of Babel, which was book 3 in the Christelle Debo science fiction, fantasy series. So there were quite a number of large books that I managed to slip in to the July readings that made me rather proud of myself, because all that I have left is Passing, which I'm reading with Shannon at That's So Poe. More on that later. I am just about a third of the way through The Boy in the Black Suit. I should have that finished by the end of the month. And this one is the second book in the British Library Women's Writers. Again, I should have that finished by July, and I'll talk about that with Cheryl. We've decided to have a little project with those 4 books. So, let's see. Oh, I picked up The Inconvenient Indian is a read aloud audiobook. I'm sorry, an audiobook from Hoopla. So I'm listening to that when I'm doing the dishes or sewing, that kind of thing. It's very sad. He's just a beautiful, beautiful storyteller. And what he does is he takes a sort of colonial point of view, like let's just pretend the Indian massacres that were alleged to have killed, hundreds and hundreds of white people. Well, there are actually statistics on, what the deaths were and so forth. And I think over the, several hundred years of contact and conflict, there were something like maybe 1,000 white people killed. But he does it in a storytelling kind of a way. And then in contrast, he will talk about the different assaults and wars and just that sort of thing, not including disease, just things that actually included weapons, and how many First Nations people died at the hands of white people. So, but he does it in a storytelling kind of a way. So although the core facts are they're very difficult. You get a real sense of the people involved, and it has got a sardonic twist too. So I'm really enjoying it as an audiobook. I really, really like it. That will take me into June because I am doing it up at the camp. And at the camp, we don't really have any electricity, and we certainly don't have any Wi-Fi. So I can't really turn on the radio to listen to the news when I'm doing the dishes. So it makes a great thing. All right, this is my big stack. Well, what I said I was going to do is if I didn't finish something in the month of July, it would get moved to August, and August would get moved to September, but at that same time I would just get rid of whatever was not happening. So this is the pile for August. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books for sure. And what I've decided to do is sort of one book for every 2 days, and plus a little take or give a little bit, and I have a pile behind me, and then I have a whole pile coming from the library. So I'm aiming to have at least 17 books to take with me to the camp. So I won't go over what I've already talked about. The only thing that's different, and I did mention it in an earlier video, is that I picked up the 2 different copies of The Alchemist's Daughter by different authors, because my book club is reading The Strange Case of The Alchemist's Daughter, and I will do a little blog on that, hopefully in early August. So that's my first sort of August game plan. And that's about it. We did read Frankly in Love with my Woozles bookstore, so I will give a quick chat about that. They post this as a love story, and certainly the cover makes you think that we're going to be reading a love story, and it's by David Yoon. And I would say that the consensus was that although there is love as maybe it certainly trickles through the entire book, but what we're not really seeing, Frank, and his last name is Lee, L-I, so Frank Lee, he's contemplating the notions of love, certainly with his first girlfriend. I think she's in love with love, and he's just kind of going along for the ride, but he's keen on the ride. So he develops with his childhood friend, Joy Song, the idea that they would pretend to be dating each other so that they could each be dating the person they really wanted to date. And it was a fairly clever kind of a way to get around parental hovering. But of course, who does he end up falling in love with but Joy Song, who, that love story, both love stories were frankly just really disappointing. I don't think he really has a good sense of himself enough to really be deeply understanding the notions of love. And what we're really seeing, what trickles up to the top over and over again, is his role as a first-generation American, Korean American, and he identifies as a Korean American as opposed to American Korean. So, like that, I'm similar in the sense that I identify as Dutch Canadian simply because both my parents came from Holland, and that's the origin point. So for my children, they see themselves as Canadian with a bit of Dutch thrown in, because their dad is generations of of Canadians. So like I'm just a small part of the equation. Anyhow, that won't happen for Frankie Lee because he's definitely the child of Korean parents, and they have surrounded themselves with other couples who immigrated to America around the same time, and their children are having the same kinds of issues. Are we here to be American, or are we here to be Korean? And then what turns out is that these families that are Korean are so deeply racist in their own ways. They are entirely Korean-centric. In amongst all this Korean-centricness, there are pecking orders as well. So there's those that came from older families, those who had wealth, those who had education, and so forth. So they do a pretty good job of putting themselves down while they're in America, and a couple of the families are a bit better. I don't know if better is the right word. They are a bit more fluent or fluid in their Americanness, and others families where the parents have not really picked up a lot of English and so forth. So we see Frankie and his other children of those other parents kind of navigating these waters and trying to figure out how to be a first-generation immigrant in America. There aren't really any role models for them to follow because it's so closely knit, and in their high schools they are not associating with other kids who are also newcomers or the children of newcomers. So we're looking really at the immigrant experience, or I would say that it's mostly a story about being othered in your own community because, as I say, he's kind of doesn't fit in with his Korean cohort, and he doesn't really fit in with his American cohort. But a lot of that's his own attitude, and we do eventually, towards the end of the book, come across one or two people who are much more comfortable with how they see themselves in their new nation. I think that we're also just seeing a kind of maturation story in that he is pretty centered around his own needs, and there's of course, dad is somebody's got to have trials and tribulations. So in this case, dad becomes quite sick, and there is a sister that married a black man and has been sort of shunned by the family and all the friends, and so there's that kind of why can't Hannah come home? Why can't we forgive her? This kind of tension is going on as well. So I think that the book club liked the book, but not for the reasons we had been led to believe that we should like the book. That, the love story was really secondary as far as we were all concerned. And it's nicely written, and the character of Frankie Lee, he's kind of a fun guy. I felt that his second girlfriend's boyfriend that was trying to be hidden, he was called Wu, and he was Chinese, and he was like a big guy, and he was a character I would like to have seen more of, and I feel that was true of, oh my gosh, what's his name? Frankie Lee's best friend's name is Q, like the letter Q, and they have quite a very firm friendship, and Q, we don't really get a sense of this. There's a couple of glimpses that he is coming out, but boy is he reluctant to come out. And I think I would have liked to have been in his head a bit more, especially as he was extremely supportive of Frankie Lee and his drama. I would have liked to have seen what he thought about some of Frankie Lee's, issues, I guess. So we didn't hear that voice at all, which was too bad. I'm not really sure how I would rank this book. Would I recommend it? Probably not. I think there are better love stories out there. I think there are also better immigrant stories out there, but it is certainly well within wanting to read it. So I'm going to give it about a 3.5 out of 5, and trying to remember whether he wrote. Yes, he wrote a book called Everything, but that is not clear to me whether. I'm sorry, he drew illustrations for that, and I don't know whether that was a graphic novel or what. Anyways, that's it for Frankly in Love, and that's it for me today. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true, and I'll be bringing you some new stuff next month in August when I'll be coming to you from the camp. hopefully swinging in a hammock. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.